My name is John V. Welcome to Chautauqua People. My guest today is Nancy Bargar, long active in Chautauqua County politics and governmental affairs. Nancy, how long has your family been in Chautauqua County?
They came on the Erie Barge Canal in 1832.
And so you, goodness, almost 200 years. And where did you go to high school?
I went to our city school, Jamestown High School.
Okay. And what was your status upon graduation? You were the?
Well, I was junior class president. We had one of the baby boomer classes of 621 people as I went through high school.
Okay.
Very big. But I've always been in governance since, I think, elementary school. I was homeroom representative and then vice president of my junior high, and just had the bug from the beginning.
Okay, and can stay with it. Now tell me about your college experience.
I ended up going to a new school. It was created in Clinton, New York, to be the women's partner to Hamilton College Men's School. And Kirkland was started the first year. I was a pioneer with a lot of other women. We were about 126 in that charter class. And it eventually was dissolved into Hamilton, so I pretty much say I'm a graduate of Hamilton College.
Right. Now, were you involved in any political campaigns during your college years?
I was. One that you probably would be familiar with, Charlie Goodell, who had come from the city of Jamestown, an attorney. My father actually was with a small group of people who asked him to run for Congress, and he was campaigning through central New York, and I was very much one of the 60s kids who had reservations about the Vietnam War and very much in support of his candidacy.
And so you supported the candidacy also for the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
And he was appointed by Governor Rockefeller to fill the unfilled term of Senator Kennedy, and then he stood for election, and what happened?
It didn't work out, unfortunately, and it was our loss, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What did you do after you graduated then from Kirkland, and what did you do after college?
After college, I was, I think, I'm a generalist, let's put it that way. I did not have my sights on graduate school when I started college. It was not even in my imagination. But by the time I graduated, I realized I needed more focus. I did go to Boston for a while, and then I went back to school at the University of Vermont Graduate School of Education to become certified, and taught school for a while in Utah, came back, worked for the local newspaper here, the Post-Journal, and was invited to go with our assemblyman at the time, after working there for a while, to the New York State Legislature. So that was another way for me to be involved in state legislative affairs.
Right. And what was the Rotary Journalism Award?
While I was there, I applied for a opportunity to go anywhere in the world. The Rotary Foundation, not like their exchange programs for high school students, but for graduate students. I don't think they have the Journalism Award any longer. They just general graduate awards. But I was successful in applying to go any place I wanted to study for a year at their expense, and I chose the Stockholm Journalism School for part of my year abroad, and helped co-author a book on Swedish healthcare, and I worked for the national public radio station there, Sveriges Radio.
Now, do you speak Swedish?
I do. I wouldn't want to start performing on air at this stage, but certainly one of the gifts of Rotary, and there are many Rotarians around, was language. And because it was considered a critical language, Swedish is not spoken by too much of the world.
Right.
I was able to go over there ahead of my year, so I was actually there a year and 3 months. And that whole summer, I was immersed in the language, primarily with young men from Iran, because it was the time of their families wanting to get them out of Iran, and there was the war going on, and they didn't want their kids to be in that war. So we didn't speak English all day long for 3 months. All I did was sit in classes with other people learning Swedish.
Isn't that interesting? And what an appropriate language for Chautauqua County.
Yes, oh yes, and that was part of my consideration. I have a cousin who's been the Swedish consul here for many years, and our family had come on my father's side from Sweden.
Right. Now, you've been active in political campaigns along the way. Please tell me what you did for Stan Lundin.
In 1982, I was his campaign manager for a re-election campaign to the Congress, and that was a great opportunity again to particularly get better acquainted with the Southern Tier. The congressional district at that time was going very far east up to Elmira, and it's a big distance. It's bigger than some states, the territory.
Now, you had a couple campaigns of your own.
I did have more than a couple of campaigns.
Let's talk about the Senate and the Assembly.
Yeah, well, let's start with, I ran for the county legislature in 1991, and I figured the 10 years that I spent here in Mayville as a legislator, I ran 9 campaigns, including primaries.
Goodness.
Because there is something which would be of interest, I would think, that will be on the ballot this fall here in the county to extend the legislative terms from 2 years to 4 years for county legislators.
Okay.
But at the time we ran, as it is now, every 2 years. So in the even years, you were running for, let's see, the even years we were running for the state legislature, and odd years for the county legislature. So it was a lot of running. I ran for the Senate 3 times and the Assembly once.
Okay.
Yes, a perennial loser.
And you had your fill of that, didn't you?
But campaigning is so invigorating, and you meet so many people. You have, how many other opportunities do you have in this life to knock on the doors of anybody? You see rural poverty is something that I feel a lot of my friends and neighbors don't ever see, because you just don't get a chance or an excuse to be there. But when you go door to door, which you do in every campaign to some extent, you really see the context in which you live.
And that becomes a major experience in life, doesn't it? To go beyond your own friendship circle and then to meet these different people.
For me, very much so. I love that feeling of democracy, that feeling of getting to know everybody, all the ranges, all the genders, anybody old enough to vote was certainly on my radar.
Right. Now, tell me a little bit about your experience on the county legislature.
I represented the village of Lakewood and other parts of the town of Bustye.
Okay.
And until that election, the county legislature had never had any Democratic women.
Okay.
A Republican woman had been elected. The same year that I was elected, also Lula Taylor from Jamestown, and she was the first black African-American elected at that level in the state of New York.
Right.
So that was an exciting year for us. That was the start, and I had various committee assignments. I was on finance the entire time, which was a wonderful chance, because every piece of important legislation, I feel, comes through Ways and Means or fiscal or finance. So you saw everything. And I was on the environmental committee, and certainly my passions have been health and the environment, I would say. And then I became the minority leader, and we took the majority, and I became the majority leader. I was not successful going to become the chairman of the legislature, but that's another story.
Right. And so what were your duties as majority leader?
Majority leader runs the caucus, and like most political bodies, you get the members of your political party together prior to a meeting and talk about your points of view and how you're going to argue on the floor ahead of time. I was adamantly against block voting, where there were times throughout that decade where people felt that we should all vote together. I wasn't of that school, and I think for the most part no one behaves that way really much longer up here in Mayville.
Right, right. And so they expect you to vote your conscience. And
when you're in the majority, you are setting the agenda. When you're in the minority, you are picking away at the majority all the time of what they're not doing.
Right.
So it's a little bit, in a way, it's more fun to be, I think, in the minority, because you can constantly be analyzing and pulling apart and deconstructing all the things that are going on. When you're in the majority, there's a lot on your plate.
And you've got to be more responsible, don't you?
And it's harder to do what you said you were going to do.
Right. Now, let's move along here. You also served on the board of Jamestown Community College.
As part of being a legislator, we had a liaison from the legislature to the college board. And yep, that was a wonderful opportunity.
And what were some of the accomplishments from your watch then with community college?
One of the things we did was we took it from being a city-sponsored educational facility or campus to a regional sponsorship, which was a fight. There were people here in the town of Chautauqua, I remember vividly, opposed to us having them have to pay part of the overhead of running this community college. And its other campuses were involved, Olean or in Pennsylvania. But I think most of us felt that we all were benefiting, because you educate these people, they're going to work in the larger community, not just the city of Jamestown. Mm-hmm. It was the first community college in the state of New York.
It was. Mm-hmm. It was. And so it's got a long tradition then. And I've spent 12 years teaching in a community college in North Carolina, Wake Tech, which has done very well, and is now the largest community college in terms of enrollment in that state. One of the things we were always concerned about was the attrition of community college students. Did you have any feel for that during your time?
I'm sure that it goes on, and I'm sure it's a struggle. I was more aware of the way it was able to funnel students from Jamestown Community College largely to Fredonia. Right. And now that's expanded in much greater ways. The facilities are tremendous. I often said when I went to the city, it's down more in Faulkner, New York, their campus was better than what I went to in a brand new school where our dorms were like fallout shelters, and we had hard hats the first year. But the community college has been very much a beneficiary of local foundations here, and has had successes in lots of ways, particularly the Manufacturing Tech Institute, which trains a lot of people vocationally, is right down in that neighborhood as well. So some people go over and train for industry.
And for many of those students, they're first generation college, and it gives them some marketable skills so they can stay in the community and have a much better job, higher standard of living. Everything we know about higher education leads to good outcomes, with a few exceptions. I mean, people tend to have better health habits. They have higher rates of participation in local community activities, and more stable marriages. All sorts of things that are desirable outcomes for that. And typically, the cost is relatively low to a community per student. And there is a dollar figure. There's no denying that. But it's a whole lot better than someone being on the dole later on and not being a productive person. I like to use the term a dues-paying member of society, and that's what community college turned so many of those folks into. Now, let's talk about some more difficult issues here. And when we look at the recent census every 10 years, Chautauqua County has not done well for population. And what can be done to keep young adults in the area?
Well, I know you're probably aware that just the other day we were the beneficiary of a very competitive award from the state of New York, that the governor had put out the opportunity to give away $100 million, and 10 communities would receive 10. Mm-hmm. And Jamestown was the beneficiary of one of those $10 million gifts. So the jury is still out, and this was preliminary in their application of how they might use that money. I personally, my experience, familial, primarily has been that the lucky ones, the people who do the best in our area, are ones who can own their own business, and pretty much either a startup or buy another business that someone is ready to sell. That's worked very well for a lot of the people that I view as having success here. I know, John, that you want to keep this a very positive conversation.
Go for it.
But I was thinking on the way up here that we are struggling right now, I think, a little bit with a reputation of this drug crisis. We have drug busts all the time, and it's hard to believe. We don't want to admit it, but it's going on, and we have to get a handle on that for people to want to live here, to want to raise families here.
And the problem isn't limited just to Chautauqua County. Buffalo News this past weekend, Sunday paper had an article about it, and Erie County is predicting 400 deaths this year from opioid abuse, and so it's a national crisis. And I'm not with easy answers as to what should happen.
In spite of our realization that this is happening and are struggling with it all the time, we, as you know, are celebrating in a most wonderful way the decision that a National Comedy Center will be built here.
Okay.
And this is, we're talking $40 million some dollars invested, and the domino effect of this is going to be tremendous. On the west side of Jamestown, which started with the ice arena, developing, and now we're taking the old train station. That was redeveloped a while ago. It's a great venue for wedding receptions, and so that whole side of town is going to just be completely redone. There's going to be a new brewery with a restaurant. They're talking about illuminating this river walk along the Chautauqua River, which people all over the area come here to paddle and kayak. We have a rowing association down in that section of Jamestown. There's so much going on, and if you are following in the summertime, you just can't keep up with all the events that take place around here.
Right. And so indeed, it's a matter of innovation, isn't it? That's
innovation, and I don't need to tell you about tourism. For a young person, I think that they see a lot of opportunity for helping to bring tourists here and keep them here. One of the things that I'm sure we eventually will have this matter settled. It's always a question of everything revolves around Chautauqua Lake, even though certainly Chautauqua County includes part of Lake Erie. That's important to us as well. But Chautauqua Lake, I will tell you how mortified I was within the last year to find out that a rental cottage that I've had for a number of years was out of compliance with a septic. I mean, you're talking to somebody who, that just was unbelievable to me. So since then, I've had a new septic installed. Because we've been waiting and waiting for this sewer to be completed around the lake, and I just felt a moral responsibility to bite it because I'm not convinced it's going to happen that soon. It's the North Basin is making great progress, but we still have that ahead of us.
Right. Let me just go back to economic development in this area. And the young adults in your family have remained in Western New York. What are they doing?
I have two nephews in Buffalo that purchase businesses. One is, I haven't seen it, it's in Larkinville.
Okay.
And it's very much, I believe, working for the Defense Department, doing sewing, kind of a sewing business. And another one, the business is in Grand Island, and he lives in Buffalo, and they make, I can't explain it to you. It's transceptors, transformers.
Right.
But they're both very happy with their decision to take their life and their economies into their own hands. And then I have a niece who she and her husband have just purchased a business, and another nephew who actually owns a business in Pennsylvania but lives over here and commutes, and another nephew who runs a furniture hardware company. So we're all very much concerned about Western New York's economy.
Western New York, they're in business, they're taking care of their own life and not sitting back complaining about situations, but being charged. And the other thing you're telling me, I had one of your nephews in my class in Campbell University in Bowie's Creek, North Carolina, and you're telling me that I utterly failed to convince him to settle in North Carolina. And New York is where it is.
Well, that nephew, I wouldn't call him as totally settled. I wouldn't take that bet. But he's very happy, and the Renaissance of Buffalo, New York is something. He was kidding us recently about how he used to come back every weekend to see his friends. But so much is going on in Buffalo, Canal Side, and I think he's very happy to be making friends there.
Right, right. Now, local business generators, you say, with things that have some innovation, and such as the Comedy Center, to go ahead with that. Are there lessons we can draw from them?
Are there lessons we can draw from? Pose that question again.
What we look at these successful businesses? What lessons do we draw? How do they function? What should we tell others to replicate?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say that there's constant retraining. As I talk to my relatives about how they keep things going, and concerned about wanting to have diversity in their business and wanting to have embrace all the people who they know are unemployed and who would like to be employed.
Right.
It gets back to what you said earlier. You need to be supportive of kids going back to college and taking classes. I'm not on the inside on that, John. I did serve on the Industrial Development Agency and was chairman of the Economic Development Committee here for a long time. But from what I understand, it's really helping each other. A lot of going to each other to get a better feel for how to make it work.
Right, right. Now, what are the area's greatest needs for economic development, such as transportation and the like? Could you review that?
Oh, I feel transportation is huge. We live in an area that you really, it's not just trying to get to Chautauqua Institution and back. If you can't drive a car for some reason, you're kind of stuck. We don't have Uber here, and we don't have a bus system. We have a CARTS, Chautauqua Area Regional Transportation System, which there is a schedule, but for my money, it just isn't enough in any way. We have a couple of probably cab companies, which is not enough.
Right.
It's just a constant struggle, whether you're trying to get to our county airport or the Buffalo airport or the Erie airport, to get around with that kind of transportation. Now the upside, I suppose, is you're talking to somebody who I think it's a traffic jam when I go to Erie or Buffalo. I don't recognize it because we don't have traffic jams.
Right. Right.
But yeah, transportation, I hope with the Comedy Center, I'm sure they're going to have more infrastructure that will allow people to get there and get away easier.
Right.
More easily.
Right. Let's talk about that big institution down the road, Chautauqua Institution. What is the economic impact of that upon the county?
I'm biased because I've listened to it for so many years, and I worked on the inside, I was on the board. I think Chautauqua has become just, it's always been important, but increasingly what I see, this is something that I'm very pleased to say, that so many years ago when I was on the board, rarely did you see in our local newspaper any reporting except I'm on the entertainment page. You know, Bill Cosby was here or whatever. But now they're talking about the administration, and they're talking about, and this has to do with the controversy of the AMP and other things. There's news. There's news. It's not just programming. But I think they're paying attention, and the media should be paying attention, because Chautauqua does have an employment that's important. They have a wonderful pension system for those who are year-round employees, TIA-CREF. I think that it's critical.
In many respects, I think it's the best employer in the county. I don't claim to be thoroughly knowledgeable, but I'm left with that impression.
We have Cummins Engine, we have a lot of very good industries, but Chautauqua fills a need that no one else in the industry can.
Right. Now, your family has been involved in the Board of Trustees for several generations. We met as fellow members of the Board of Trustees now 10 years ago. And you currently are involved in a fundraising program. I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about the role of fundraising and nonprofits as we finish up here.
As we finish up, well, I'm helping. We created at the institution a level in between the Bestor Society, which was $3,500 and up, $1,874, which is the year Chautauqua was founded, to $3,500. So I'm trying to help people come into that level of giving annually. The generosity of people, I think, is remarkable, and it's become more so as they see how Chautauqua is run. I think. I mean, we've had hiccups and certainly disagreements, but overall, I think, particularly as President Tom Becker and Jane are on their way out, there's a very good measure of what has been done. And by that measure, those people who buy into it are going to put their money where their passions and interests are. So I'm in the middle of it, as are all the people, the volunteers at the institution, of calling on people and asking for their donations, or actually getting a read on how do they feel about the place.
And I hope you're hearing mostly good things these days.
Yes, I mean, there are lots of us who had reservations about the way the process went, but it's sort of, to me, like when you get a new minister at a church, or you don't leave the church, you just kind of, reassess. And Chautauqua was so much, it's so overwhelming. I was with a friend this weekend who told me she took a boot camp course in special studies last week, and she was doing 60 push-ups by the end of the week. It's all this that you don't even know is going on.
Right, and so it worked out well. I think particularly as Tom Becker finishes his watch here, there's an enormous amount of goodwill toward him and appreciation for the wonderful things he's done.
He said something the other day that I can't let go. He's been speaking in many venues, but he said, he talked about the distinction between a transactional life and a relational life, and how we go through our days making lists and tasks, and those are our transactions. Did we get it done? Did we accomplish that? And then there's the relational,
right,
and how we balance that in our lifetimes. I can't stop thinking about it.
Indeed, and I think he's exactly right on. Is there anything else we need to cover?
No, I just thank you very much for kindly inviting me to be part of your programming.
This has been great fun, and I appreciate all you have done for Chautauqua County as a part-time resident, and spending my summers here as long as I can. Very happy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I guess I would say this. Even I, who've lived most of my life here, I'm just beginning to appreciate what some of other people keep telling me, the clouds, the sky, that I took for granted all these years. It didn't seem like anybody, or the electrical storms they don't have in California.
Got it.
Now I'm appreciating some things every day that I didn't.
The beauty of these things. That's great. Thank you so much
Thanks
for appearing here on Chautauqua People.
Thank you.